Hello and welcome to And That's a Fact, the podcast series where we take our humble opinions and make them into definitive, objective fact. I'm Neil Adamson.
And I'm Rick Papandrea.
And today, if you clicked on this video, you know we are diving into the contemporary bracket of our ultimate Disney Pixar bracket that we created. It covers a period from 1975 to 2000, all the Disney animated films that came out during that period. Some people call it the Renaissance period.
The Disney Renaissance, yeah. This is the stuff that we grew up with if you're our age. That is to say, people in their late 20s and early 30s who still spend hours talking about Disney films.
Yeah, yesterday we did our post-millennial bracket. We're still in round one, and we will take a look at how the matches, went for this round of this bracket and see who's moving on and what the matchups are going to be next week.
And like yesterday, I don't know the results yet. Neil has looked at the poll results, and I have been careful not to, so I know who's going into the match, and I'm going to talk about who I think should win and might win, and then Neil has the answers for us. So
yes. So starting off, our first match of this bracket is the number 1 seed Winnie the Pooh, not Winnie and the Pooh, as I said yesterday.
Right, Winnie and the Pooh from the Thousand Acre Forest was what we had yesterday, but that's not right.
Winnie the Pooh, number 1 seed, going up against the number 16 seed Oliver and Company.
Right, and I mean, I haven't seen this Winnie the Pooh. I have seen this Oliver and Company. And I haven't seen it in a long time, so it might not be great, but I remember it fondly. What's surprising to me about this matchup, though, is not either of the titles, but that Winnie the Pooh is the 1 seed, a movie that, honestly, I had completely forgotten about is the highest rated film, and not, like Mulan or Beauty and the Beast or Little Mermaid, Lion King, all these really great movies from that sort of late 1980s, early 1990s period all lose out to Winnie the Pooh, which is surprising to me. But I'm going to go ahead and assume that Winnie the Pooh wins this bracket against Oliver and Company, despite Oliver and Company being based on some classic literature.
Yeah, this... You mentioned you hadn't seen this Winnie the Pooh. This was the original one that came out in 1977, and when I think...
I have seen it.
Maybe
I have seen it and I just don't remember.
I think most children have probably seen this Winnie the Pooh, especially children our age. You just might not remember it. But this one was a much bigger event, and it stuck in the zeitgeist, I think, a lot more than something like Oliver and Company. This film... while people might not remember, we talked about this yesterday, while people might not remember the film itself, they love the character, and so that always gives it an edge. But our seeding, as we spoke on yesterday, is based off of Rotten Tomatoes critic ratings. And this is one of the films that's been on, or in this time period, that's been out longer than any of the others. So when you have a film like that, you're going to have a lot more, you're going to have a better ability as a critic to go back and reflect on it a lot more, which for some films that can be a bad thing, but in the case of a character like Winnie the Pooh, that's definitely something that helps it, I think. So you guessed that Winnie the Pooh would take this one as the 1 seed. You are correct. Winnie the Pooh wins this 80% to 20%.
Yeah. That makes sense to me. I may have been one of that 20%, I'll be honest, but it doesn't surprise me that Winnie wins.
Yeah. So moving on to our next match in this bracket, we have the number 8 seed Hercules versus the number 9 seed The Rescuers.
This is interesting. The Hercules versus the 8 and 9, super close in seed, but I'm guessing that the results were extreme. Hercules has had pretty good lasting power, I think. If you ask people, Hercules, I mean, everyone's going to think of the Disney movie. Classic songs everybody likes. It's one of those ones that's still part of the Disney culture. Rescuers, though, I think really has been largely forgotten. And even when people do think of rescuers, they think of the rescuers down under.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say. I think the sequel to that film is much more remembered than the original. Not that the original, doesn't have its merits, but it's definitely something that kind of is left off the map. And when it's going up against a film like Hercules, which, to be honest, I don't really like Hercules all that much. I think it represents a period where Disney's 2D animation really started going downhill. But I also know that for a lot of kids, like, this was their childhood. This is what, they grew up with. And when you have that nostalgia effect, it's going to be hard to overtake something like The Rescuers that's forgotten.
And as a counterpoint, Danny DeVito sings in it. Not necessarily well, but certainly it's notable.
Yeah. There's some good stuff in Hercules, but I think just overall, it takes this round.
It's 8 seed for a reason. We can say that.
Yeah, and it does take this round. It beats out The Rescuers 73% to 27%. But I do anticipate that it will have a hard time going forward. It will be going up against Winnie the Pooh. Now,
I still think it'll beat Winnie the Pooh. I think that it has more love. It doesn't mean that it's better necessarily, but I think that it certainly has more like staying power. I don't know though.
I don't know. I think just that character of Winnie the Pooh, like he's too.
Are you gonna say timeless? Because
yeah.
I feel obligated to point out that Hercules has been around for thousands of years.
But not this version. And
sure,
yeah, Winnie the Pooh has been around a lot longer than the Disney version as well. But I do think that Disney's responsible for Winnie the Pooh's prevalence in pop culture.
Yeah, I think though the winner will be because of the songs. I think that Hercules has some really iconic songs, and whether or not the film doesn't hold up, the songs for the most part I think really do, and they're still played at like the parks and everything, and people. So I think that, and I'm gonna really try not to sing any songs for because we don't own any of them, but I think that the songs from Hercules are gonna give it an edge over Winnie the Pooh in the next round.
Yeah, and this is another thing that I felt that the songs of that film, I liked what they did with how they integrated the songs. It wasn't like your normal Disney film where the characters break out into song all the time. It was, you had the muses that were basically telling the story the same as like a classical Greek play or musical.
Right.
And that technique was something that I found was really interesting, but just didn't have the power that another film would have that has the characters actually singing more.
That's a really good point. A lot of Disney movies, the plot more or less stops for these big songs, and Hercules does a great job to use the songs to move the plot along.
Yeah.
And that I think is a good point in its favor. So.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on to our next match, match number 3. We have the number 5 seed Little Mermaid going up against the number 12 seed The Fox and the Hound. Now, this was one that I did anticipate it was going to be a close match, even though it is a 5 and a 12 seed.
Yeah, Fox. They're both from right about I don't remember what year Fox and the Hound came up, but within probably.
It was a little earlier than Little Mermaid.
Yeah, and I think. Personally, I know the Little Mermaid movie. I know it better. I could tell you the plot better. The Fox and the Hound, I remember not as much of it, just that it's really sad, and I remember like that song that everybody knows from The Fox and the Hound.
Yeah.
That, again, I won't sing. So yeah, I imagine that this was a real close one, but if I got to guess, I'm going to say Little Mermaid won, if only by a little.
Yeah, Fox and the Hound was an interesting one because it represented one of these Disney films that the soundtrack did stick in your mind, but it wasn't a soundtrack where the characters were singing. Not like Hercules, this is more like Tarzan, where we had some really, really great songs, but...
it's not a musical.
Exactly.
They're non-diegetic soundtrack song.
Yeah, and I think around this time, or at least the films that you were growing up with when The Fox and the Hound was around on VHS, that was kind of an anomaly at that time. Most of them were full-on musicals. So, going up against the musical like Little Mermaid, I think that Little Mermaid has the musical edge. But like you said, Fox and the Hound really emotionally, it hits you.
Right. And I think I give it to Little Mermaid for two reasons. And the first is that a lot of people, particularly kids, don't want to feel sad. They haven't come to terms with that feeling yet, and they haven't had that feeling of growing apart from your friends. And that's something that happens, and it's sad, and it's real, and that might make for a good movie, but that doesn't mean people want to watch it. And the other reason I give the edge to Little Mermaid is, again, I got to give it that princess bump. I'm going to assume that princess movies get an advantage.
Yep.
And so, Little Mermaid, princess bump. I'm going to assume it takes Fox and the Hound.
Yeah, it does. It wins out 74% to 26%. So it was one that I thought would be close. I thought it'd be a little closer than that, but
yeah, me too.
I'm not that surprised that Little Mermaid won out so much, because it is a film that so many people regard. I know, it's my sister's favorite film, or favorite Disney film. So I know so many people regard it so highly. So not really surprised. Moving on to our next match, we have the number 4 seed, The Lion King, versus the number 13 seed, The Rescuers Down Under.
This one I think is going to be maybe the most obvious that we have in this bracket.
I think there's one. I think there's one other match that's a little bit more obvious, but I would agree.
It's the last one.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one is going to be. I mean, Lion King is equal parts Shakespeare and Disney and Elton John. So it's going to be one of the juggernauts in this bracket, I think. And The Rescuers Down Under just isn't. Sure, it has a cool Aussie cowboy in a hat. But, I mean, again, this isn't a princess movie, per se. There's a monarchy and a princess. It's not, but it's getting an Elton John bump. It's getting, that, nostalgia, early 90s bump. It's definitely, I can't imagine a world where Down Under beats Lion King, if we're being honest.
Yeah, we talked about The Rescuers Down Under being the stronger and the more memorable of the two Rescuers films.
Right, but that's being the stronger and more memorable of a forgettable pair of brothers.
Yeah, but going up against The Lion King, I knew going into this thing that it really didn't stand a chance. You mentioned, you got Elton John, and this is a film that combines those two different things that we talked about with Little Mermaid versus Fox and the Hound. It's a musical, but then it also has songs on the soundtrack that aren't sung by the main characters that really resonate and stick in your head as well.
I don't know if there's a person in the Western world who couldn't identify those opening chords of The Circle of Life. Oh, I know what that is. It is so much a part of sort of the modern cultural identity with the Broadway show and the movie and the live action movie that's coming out, which that's a whole other question. How can you have a live action movie with CGI?
Well, they do it like the Jungle Book.
Don't get me started. Which also was not live action.
But it was. I mean,
there was one live action element. It was all 3D environments and almost all 3D characters.
But it's not
just one kid in a blue room.
But it's motion capture. It's not animated. It's like Avatar.
But the original animated movies were also more or less motion capture.
No, not really. I mean, motion capture as we know motion capture now.
Sure.
This is photorealistic Avatar style. That's where you say live action. But
all
yeah.
I'm saying, and this is a diversion, is that I think it would be better if they shot it more like the musical and had them as human beings doing the Lion King story in traditional African costumes. I think that would be really cool, and I would rather see that than another.
Well,
than the Lion.
I love the music. I think the musical is great. But I saw it on Broadway in Chicago when it came here years ago. But I think that it's totally different audience. You know, you're not gonna get casual moviegoers as interested in something like that. Even if they should be, you're not going to get that the way you would with something that's as sleek as a Lion King version of what Jon Favreau did with The Jungle Book.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I think hands down, Lion King, obvious winner to this one. 90% takes it over 10% from Rescuers Down Under. So
90 to 10. Yeah, that sounds, even that surprises me that it was that close.
Yeah, so moving on to our fifth match of this bracket, we have the number 6 seed Tarzan going up against the number 11 seed Hunchback of Notre Dame.
This one is going to make me cry, I think. I love Hunchback. It is one of my favorite Disney movies, has one of the best scores, in my opinion, is just incredibly well done. And don't get me wrong, Tarzan is great too, and who doesn't love Phil Collins? But I think that Hunchback is a decidedly better movie and more interesting, with more interesting characters. But I'm going to guess that it did not beat Tarzan.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where Rick and I disagree. Tarzan,
that never happens.
Tarzan, to me, is a much stronger film. I think Hunchback of Notre Dame it has its moments and its elements, but I think overall, with what they were able to do with Tarzan, and this was a period where a lot of the films that Disney was putting out were lackluster. They weren't big blockbusters. They weren't getting the critical acclaim that some of the other films had been getting before them. And
because these are both like mid-late 90s, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
96 and 98 or something like that?
I think Tarzan was 99 and Hunchback was, I think, 96, 97. So, yeah, you know, later films during kind of the lower period of this period for Disney. But to me, the music in Tarzan, again, it's a situation where we don't have the characters singing, and yet it's still so powerful. I know so many of those songs, for me and so many other people that I know, I still listen to them. I love that soundtrack so much. I mean, Phil Collins did amazing.
Yeah, it's a great soundtrack to be sure. I think that honestly might be a point against it for me. Not the songs, just that it's not a musical. I love musicals and musical movies. And so nothing against like a Tarzan-style film where there's great sounds that are integrated with the story and help tell the story, but that the characters aren't singing, versus a true musical. I'm just going to be more drawn to the musical. And so, you know, Quasimodo singing his feelings as he looks over the city, that means more to me than Phil Collins singing Tarzan's feelings over the track. And so, nothing against Tarzan, it's still great, but I'm a little disappointed.
Well,
in everyone.
To be honest, I think this one kind of has a little bit of a Wall-E feel to me, because really the majority of the first act of this film is more or less a silent film. And to me, that's what makes it a stronger film. That within that first act, you have a situation where you're basically having to tell this story completely visually and through the music. And I think how well they do that is really what puts it over the top for me.
Yeah, that's fair. You know, the first 6 or 10 minutes of Hunchback aren't silent at all. They're the opposite. The chorus character, again, tells the story directly to the audience. So it's totally the opposite. And it's just a different preference, I guess.
Yeah, but going off of that, Tarzan does end up taking this one 67% to 33%.
That's pretty close-ish.
Yeah.
Maybe?
I would say
this. Let me have this. Say that it's close.
You know, I think that it's close enough. I thought it would be a little closer.
Yeah.
I was a little surprised by how much Tarzan pulled ahead. next match is one that I felt would be pretty close.
This, it seems like you're saying it's not, but to me, this will probably be my hardest match to choose personally of at least this section of the bracket, for sure.
Yeah, it is the number 3 seed Aladdin going up against the number 14 seed Pocahontas. So, I think, to me, this one is... I felt it would be close, but in terms of my preference, it's a no-brainer. To me, Aladdin is just far above Pocahontas, although I really did enjoy that film. But something that's interesting that I think is Pocahontas is a 14 seed. And
that's nuts to me.
Yeah, and I do think that it is that low, because again we're going off of critical reception from Rotten Tomatoes scores, and I do think that this is a situation where hindsight really impacts this score. I think when this film first came out, there was a lot more praise for it, and as time has gone on and we've looked back on the way that Native Americans were depicted in this film, and just different aspects of
it's better
talking
than
about
Peter
cultural
Pan?
appropriation.
That
Yes,
Not much
but it didn't need to do much to be better than Peter Pan in that regard.
For me, sorry, go ahead.
I didn't notice, and again, I haven't seen Pocahontas in quite a few years, and when I was younger, I don't think I really ever noticed anything glaringly offensive about this film, but I do think that if you go back, there probably are some things that, in terms of the critical, ratings, have affected it.
For me, this is a really close one for me. I love both of these movies. I watched them both a ton on those giant, Disney plastic VHS things. I think that Pocahontas is a more artful movie, if I can say that. Just the way they use colors and... if you remember, obviously Colors of the Wind, they use lots of cool colors in that, but also the song where the natives and the settlers are both preparing to go to battle, and they're using these cool billowing smoke colors that come crashing together, and it's just an incredible sequence. And also there's a line in that song that I love to this day, and it's, "They're not like you and I, that means they must be evil." And it's just such a funny satire, but also that's how many people think, and it's one of those lines that works really well on a lot of different levels. And I can't choose, honestly. I'll be oh, Pocahontas, but wait, no, this part in Aladdin. Oh, but wait, this part in Pocahontas. I am really
it's interesting too, because I think as a kid you don't necessarily hear that line.
Right.
It's the same thing with Beauty and the Beast, for example. Beauty and the Beast, I think when I was a kid, I never really heard all the lines to the mob song, and then as I got older, and it has the same kind of line in that song when they say, "We don't like what we don't understand. Yeah. In fact, it scares us, and this monster is mysterious at least." So it's
poking fun
Disney.
At the people who really think like that. It's excellent satire hidden in a kids movie.
But it's not very subtle.
No, and it just goes over kids' heads.
It goes over kids' heads, but it's not subtle at all to adults. And I think that's something that Disney, through the years, have really honed to be much better. Pixar, I think, more than Disney, but Disney has done it with some of their more recent films.
And only recently, finally, have other companies started to do this as well. If we look at some DreamWorks stuff, if we go back and watch Shrek, as an adult, there's not much in Shrek that I'm going to find appealing, because I don't enjoy fart jokes, really. I've seen them. I've been there. I'm an adult now. They're not as fun as they once were. But the How to Train Your Dragon series, that's a series I can enjoy as an adult, because there's stuff in there for kids and there's stuff in there for adults too. So Disney has been doing this for a long time, and I think that those are some great examples of it, for sure.
Yeah, so in this case, Aladdin going up against Pocahontas, I know Rick had a hard time with this. This one for me was a no-brainer. Apparently it was a no-brainer to most of the people who voted as well, because Aladdin takes it 87% to 13%.
That really surprised me. So it's going to be Aladdin up against Tarzan. Aladdin will take that one, I think.
Yeah, I think in that situation for the next round, I think Aladdin does definitely have the stronger edge. I thought Tarzan had the much stronger edge against Hunchback, but I did think that was even going to be close. And then you have a film, Tarzan, going up against something, a juggernaut like Aladdin, and I think it's going to be obvious.
Aladdin has a princess boost, and it also has Robin Williams, and I mean, don't get me wrong, Phil Collins is great, but Robin Williams is a juggernaut of himself. So I think that one is going to be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. So moving on to our next match in our bracket, we have the number 7 seed Mulan going up against the number 10 seed The Great Mouse Detective.
Now, this is one of my favorite movies ever, The Great Mouse Detective. I love Mulan, don't get me wrong, but Great Mouse Detective is one of those movies that I watched as a young kid, and it is part of what shaped who I am today. The Great Mouse Detective, and also Robin Hood, which you'll notice is not in this bracket, which really bums me out.
Well, I think that it would have been in the classic period bracket.
Oh, would it? No, it came out. That came out in. Oh, maybe you're right. I think you're right. Either way, it's not in the bracket at all, and that bums me out. But Great Mouse Detective, that was one of those movies that was like, holy cow! I ate it up. But I'm guessing Mulan is going to win because, again, princess boost. Great Mouse Detective, it's not a musical. There are 2 songs, but the hero doesn't sing one. So, like, it doesn't have that big hero moment. And so I got to give the edge to Mulan, even though I have a softer spot in my heart for Great Mouse Detective.
Yeah, to me, Mulan is the obvious choice. Mulan was really, talking about how Disney kind of went downhill a little bit towards the end of, nearing the millennium, with their 2D animation. They had some films that kind of stood out. I think, honestly, like going back with Tarzan, I think that was a film that got more revered as time went on. Mulan was a film that was later in this period, and it was a knockout hit immediately, and it has been one of their most successful films from this period.
And I'll be honest, the Be a Man song is still like high on my list of get psyched music. So like
and there's so many songs in that, and I mean you got Donny Osmond singing that.
Great.
So
like who doesn't love Donny Osmond?
So I think Mulan is the obvious choice for this one, and Mulan does end up taking it 86% to 14%.
That makes sense.
It almost a blowout. I wouldn't say complete blowout, but I think it's not surprising at all either.
Which again, if you haven't seen The Great Mouse Detective, look it up. It's great. It's Sherlock Holmes, but as mice living in like a mouse version of London that exists alongside human London, which, granted, makes no sense, but it's awesome. And not many Disney movies have a brothel scene, and this one does. So, again, point Great Mouse Detective, but not enough to defeat Mulan, unfortunately.
Well, Mulan is going to have, I think, a little harder of a time against its next opponent, the winner of our last match of this bracket, the number 2 seed versus the number 15 seed. This is Beauty and the Beast versus the Black Cauldron. And I think it's pretty obvious which was the number 2 seed, which was the number 15, and I also think it's pretty obvious which one takes this.
Yeah, I mean, this is like if Neil and I tried to play, I don't know, professional football against an actual professional football team. People would watch it, but it would be sad.
It was a no-brainer on this one.
Yeah,
I think the Black Cauldron,
the best movie of this era, against a movie that is maybe the
very
worst.
forgotten.
Yeah, very forgotten. And
very forgotten and not a very good film.
No, scary in a way that isn't good for kids. Not a musical and not very good. So it really, I think, and that came out in what, like 87, 88, something like that. I think it just got swept.
I think it was 88.
I think it was before. Before Great Mouse Detective, because Great Mouse Detective, interesting fact, I'm going back to it, is the first example of the computer 3D animation integrated with drawing. I know a lot of people know of that scene in Beauty and the Beast where they're dancing in the hall and the camera like sweeps around, and they recreated that exact shot in the live action movie. That was also computer assisting with hand-drawn animation, but they did it first in the Great Mouse Detective. Inside there's a sequence where the hero and the villain are fighting inside the Big Ben clock, and there's all these gears and stuff, and that sequence was also assisted with computers.
I think the big thing with Beauty and the Beast in terms of that was it seemed a little more seamless, and there was a lot more detail.
Yes,
a lot more detail, and I think that was really what had that stand out and why it got so much press around that. But yeah, so Beauty and the Beast takes this one. So blowout, complete blowout, 100% to 0%. No one voted for the Black Cauldron.
And I love like sword and sorcery adventure movies, but even when they're bad, I can love them. But they're not better than Beauty and the Beast. But that makes it's going to be Beauty and the Beast versus Mulan in the next round, and I think that'll be a pretty decent blowout as well. Beauty and the Beast is a juggernaut, and it's going to be hard to stop.
Yeah, so going into our next round, we are going to have the number 1 seed Winnie the Pooh going up against the number 8 seed Hercules, the number 5 seed Little Mermaid going up against the number 4 seed The Lion King, which we didn't talk about this matchup.
Lion King, Little Mermaid, that's going to be a tough one, I think.
I think this one is going to be probably the toughest.
Yeah, Little Mermaid is
for some people.
A princess boost. They both have excellent songs.
Well, it's interesting because I think they both represent like films that when they came out and when we were young, they represented staples for each gender. Like there was like Lion King was like the boys' film, and Little Mermaid was the girls' film.
Yeah,
and
Lion King. I mean, there's a whole sequence in Lion King where a young boy learns how to be a man, and his whole arc is going from a boy who runs away from his problems to a man who confronts his problems and then throws them off a cliff into fire where they're devoured by hyenas, which sometimes I wish I could do with my problems.
Yeah, I think this is a period where, you know, in terms of like gender stereotypes, like Disney was like deep into them,
they're kind of
but they were doing them really well.
Yeah.
So like you can't fault them necessarily for being responsible for so many. You know,
and I still think Ariel is a great heroine. I mean, the villain takes away her voice. That's a huge and she has to get it back. That's awesome.
Well, and that's one of the other things is that Little Mermaid, you know, it being a girls' film, like you had a villain that was a female villain as well as a female heroine, kind of like Snow White in that regard.
And I mean that final sequence is sort of terrifying. Ursula becomes huge. They like drive a ship into her. That is some unsettling stuff.
Yeah, that always freaked me out a little when I was a little kid. So
you know that in the original draft, Ursula and Triton were siblings. I don't know what their parents were to have like mermaid Santa and evil like witch octopus as children, but that was
so that'll be the second match in the second round. Third match in the second round will be the number 3 seed Aladdin going up against the number 6 seed Tarzan.
Again, Aladdin will take that, I think.
That one will, like we said, I think Aladdin will take that one, even though it'll be hard for some people. And then
namely you, it'll be hard for you, is what you're saying.
Well, I think honestly the fourth match of the second round is going to be the hardest for me, because that's going to be Beauty and the Beast going up against Mulan, and I love Beauty and the Beast. I was involved in a stage production of it, and I think that kind of like revitalized my interest in it, and I love the live action version that they did. I love everything about that story and about like that film, but Mulan, man, I don't know. I don't know. To me, it's hard.
To Beauty and the Beast. As much as I love Mulan, this one is not nearly as hard for me as like Pocahontas versus Aladdin.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, I think it's kind of, for me, it's like any given day, it's going to be one or the other. You know, some days I'm going to lean Beauty and the Beast, and others I'm going to lean more Mulan. So we got a lot of really, really great matches coming up in the second round of the contemporary bracket. We're having a lot of fun doing this, and the way that this is going to keep going is if you vote. Yeah. We need you guys to participate and vote on these matches so that we can have, you know, a good discussion over what we think is going to win.
Yeah, if you guys don't vote and interact, we're just two doofuses basically talking into the wind.
Which we are.
But please legitimize us. We can be doofuses together. So yeah, like and subscribe. Find us on Facebook at And That's a Fact. There's a Facebook group, and that's where all the polls are going to be. There'll be a link down in the doobly-doo, if I may steal John Green's made-up word. And comment. Tell us in the comments if you think that the people that voted were stupid. And if you do, go and vote so that the stupid people get outvoted.
Exactly. So, thank you. Thank you again for watching. We want to keep doing this, so like Rick said, keep participating, and hopefully we will see you guys in the next round.
Yeah.